Blog Talk Radio. Today is Monday, March 12, 2018, and this is Foxology. I am Silver Ray Fox, your host. Happy Monday to you all. I hope it's a great day for you already. I hope you are ready to slay in whatever ways that may have, some type of specific meaning to you, getting things done, making things happen, pressing toward your goals, and trampling over obstacles and opposition. We get a lot of that, don't we? And how about getting negative people and naysayers out of your way? Slay today. Say it loud, say it proud, and say it clear for sure. I know you will. And I also know you've got many things on your to-do list, people to see and places to go. So I'm especially excited that you stopped off here for a few minutes to take a listen to see what is going on in the world of Foxology. Well, today we're going to continue to take a close look at the issue of domestic violence. If you have been following me any length of time, you know that I do several shows every year on this topic. It has special interest to me for a variety of reasons, and it has become a goal for me, too, to help us all learn more and to help victims restore their identities and self-worth and self-esteem. The problem of domestic violence is deep, and it's often dark, and it is certainly very disturbing, and the solutions are not simple. I'm talking with an expert today, Dr. Kylan Gray. Reverend Dr. Kylan Gray serves as Dean of Students of Louisville Seminary, Senior Pastor of the New Mount Zion Baptist Church of Shelbyville, and he is the Chief Operating Officer and Director of the Batterer Intervention Program of Creative Spirits Behavioral Health, Inc. of Louisville, Kentucky. And he has served as a certified Batterer intervention provider for the past 15 years. And I am just extremely excited to have him as my guest today. We're going to learn a lot today, and hopefully we will use the wisdom and insight and information and the advice to continue to help eradicate this awful and ongoing problem. Welcome, Dr. Gray. Thank you for being my guest today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I thank you for the privilege to serve in this way.
Oh, indeed. Same here. Just glad to have someone with your history and your interest and definitely your expertise in this area. I have no doubt that there will be a lot that we will be able to learn from you in this discussion today. I'd like to start by asking you to tell us about yourself. I know that there is extensive information. You can tell us everything you'd like for us to know, and those who have a further interest can look at the links that I have online. But tell us about yourself, and I know that there's also a backstory in this for you, too, so please share that, if you will.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here to talk about the work that I do and to hopefully encourage people to really join us in the fight against domestic violence. I began in this work as a batterer intervention specialist. Through my wife and I, we have a counseling center, Creative Spirits Behavioral Health, and we provide mental health, chemical dependency, treatment, and other types of family supports. And through that business, we've gone from a private practice to a behavioral health services organization here in Kentucky. During the time that we've done our chemical dependency work, we started this counseling center just to try to do chemical dependency and to really deal with the families who are being broken and ravaged by chemical dependency. And we discovered that while we were doing chemical dependency, we discovered that there is a 90% correlation, studies tells us, between the use of alcohol and drugs and domestic violence. And so we found that we couldn't really adequately deal with chemical dependency and ignore victimization through domestic violence or those chemical dependency clients who were batterers as well. So that led us to, shortly after we started our practice, to pursue training here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky as batterer intervention specialists. We have a wealth of resources here in Louisville for victim support. The Center for Women and Families is the spot here in Louisville for the full range of supportive services for victims of domestic violence. There was not that many, we're not that prolific as it relates to batterer intervention. We, among the 120 counties that's in Kentucky, there's not that many batterer intervention specialists. Most of them are gathered around the urban centers of Lexington and Louisville and smattered around the state and across the state, but there's not that a lot of help in that area. Louisville and Lexington we have several places that those who are court ordered to do domestic violence can go to, but we decided that we would be a part of that fight. It was also fueled by the personal issues that we've had with domestic violence. One of our family members, Jeanette Mack Spencer is her name, and a dear family member of ours who was murdered by her boyfriend through domestic violence over a long period of relationship, various episodes after the court hearings and the facts that come out of the case. We learned that there was multiple episodes of domestic violence for her, and she had sought out help in our local shelter in some kind of way, ended up reconnecting with her boyfriend who she deeply loved. And that was the last time that we saw her, and that was the last time that she was alive when she went back to try to reconnect with her boyfriend. And so we were receiving training during that time, but that really fueled our fire to really do the work and be committed to this work.
Yes. You know, these stories, and there's so many of them, are just difficult. They're saddening. And
yes, they are.
Even though you understand as much as you do professionally, you just really still, in your heart, you just say, I just don't understand. What, for you, has been the hardest part, the most difficult thing for you personally and professionally when you're facing individuals on a regular basis to discuss help and to discuss healing? What do you find to be the biggest challenge overall and over all your years of having people in counseling?
Well, as far as the batterers are concerned, they come in a sort of an adversarial environment. It's the only environment that will get them in the door to do therapy, because there's not too many people who can admit that they are a batterer, that they have this penchant and this cyclical behavior of abusing the one that they say that they love. And so part of the coordinated community response that most places around the country have, most municipalities have around the country, is the coordination of law enforcement and the judicial system to try to encourage men who have, and it's predominantly men. There are women who are batterers, but it's predominantly men who who I end up seeing in my practice. It is a court-ordered entry into a therapeutic environment. So they have, which means that there has been an emergency protective order that has been filled out. That's been followed up once the batterer and the victim appears before the judge in court. The judge then will sign out a domestic violence order, which orders them to, if it's a no contact order, they have to stay away from the victim's address, from the victim's place of employment. They are barred from any kind of contact in any way. And then they are ordered to do domestic violence classes. So when they come into the sessions, part of what fuels domestic violence is this the need of batterers to be in control of their spouses or their girlfriends. It is an issue of power and control. Many of them will want to blame their anger for this, but it is the need for this person to want to have control over the person that they say they love, because they conflate relationship with themselves as it relates to how their insecurities and the many things that happens within the inside of them. They feel that in order for them to be the man that they imagine themselves to be, they have to have control over their mate. So the beginning of domestic violence is not when the physical violence happens, it's the controlling behaviors that takes place before. And so when they come into my group, they are already have a stance of, that they haven't done anything. They're minimizing the behavior. They're denying it outright. And that's the most difficult part of working with them, is just getting them to trust coming in because the judge is telling them they have to come. So they come into the group and they don't want to be there. And that's so the beginning weeks of the program are, for me, the most difficult, of trying to help them to understand that they can trust this process. They can trust this therapeutic process with what they don't want to share. They can create. Go ahead.
Let me ask this, because I heard a couple of things that I want to simplify into a question.
Sure.
I know that, and I've heard it on both sides, from the victims and the batterers, that there seems to be an attitude that there is some justifiable reason that this is okay to do, even from the person that has been battered. Now, I don't know that I'll say that that's the case in all cases, but I know that it is the case in many, for reasons of she or he may have had beatings at home growing up, and the same thing for the batterer. And so the conditioning is such that this is what works if you want control, like you just described, or to exercise authority and power. So where does the breakthrough come in something like that? I'd like to know what it is that you take as an approach to that specifically. And I know it's got to vary a lot, but can you pinpoint some things that you address?
Well, the main thing that we try to address is their understanding of what it means to be a man. Because we know that our culture, early ages, and this is whether there is a man has been formed and has grown within a house with violence or without violence. There's a high chance for people that have grown up in violence and have seen it, there's a high chance that person will become a batterer themselves. But that's not necessarily the cause of battery. We've come to know, and there's much research that backs this up, that this hyper male definition that we socialize young men and boys in this country, to not feel, to not empathize, to not have any connection with another person other than the benefit of what benefits you as a human being. The way that manhood is defined both secularly and religiously, and all of these different messages that we give, both male and female parents, on how boys should be, ends up translating to adult men who are cut off from their emotions and their feelings. And so we try to address the idea of what it means to be a man, because we know that, and I see this in my practice all the time, is that these guys will defend their manhood or their sense of maleness more than they will protect their wife. That they will actually, and that's where the justification in their mind, it's erroneous thinking in their mind, but their justification for the violence and the physical, both the physical and the emotional violence, the controlling behaviors, is this insecurity of what it means to be a man. And so male privilege is the thing that we really, in various ways, in a 28-week program, we try to really get at that. There is this wonderful documentary that is available right now on Netflix. I think it's called The Faces We Wear, or The Face I'm In, or The Faces I'm In, that really gets at this way of how boys are formed by family and culture. I'm sorry, I gave the wrong title of the documentary. It is The Mask You Live In. And I would recommend everybody to see that documentary. It's The Mask You Live In, and these men are working with these boys and these teenagers and helping them to get in touch with this hidden sensitivity that they have about life and people, but they have this pose that has been developed that they have to be a man. And these messages on what it means to be a man from all aspects of society is what we believe contributes to be the very dangerous thing toward the safety of women in relationships.
So how do you? This is going to be a loaded question, so you can break it down and tell me the parts you think are important enough to discuss. But how do you go about creating an understanding about empathy and emotional intelligence and healthy relationships and healthy communication? I mean, I would think you'd have a lot of barriers you'd have to get through before you can even get to some of that based on what you just explained. But I'm sure you have to get to a point where those things are also being thought about and taught, and given good advice about. How do you do that?
Well, the first thing that we do is we explain the legal definition of what domestic violence is. Because what I found is that the men that come into my groups, they think of physical violence, and that's the only thing that they think about. And so they think of physical violence, and they think of the extremes of physical violence, and they exclude themselves out of the picture. So when you begin to start showing them not only that domestic violence is not just the physical, but it's the words that you say. It's the way that you approach sex with your partner and how that happens. It's the environment that is established. And so you broaden their mind and broaden their definition and give the various different actions and put it out on the board and help them, invite them to find themselves in those actions. Because they will be quick to tell you that I didn't touch my wife, even if they did, that they will be quick to say that that's not me, I'm not that kind of guy. And in the beginning part of our work, we try to help them to see that every one of us have the potential, that every one of us have the potential to become violent and to choose to be violent, because every one of us have been raised in a violent culture. And so we try to help them to see, first of all, by defining what domestic violence is, the words, the belittling, the calling names, the humiliations, these actions of having her, that she's given her the third degree, that she's got to report where she's been, how long she's been, who she's talking with, the consistent and persistent mistrust that she is faithful to him. And it usually, when the violence gets really physical, many times, the justification for the violence is the fact that he thinks that she's sleeping with somebody, or that she's checking somebody else out, or that she's betraying his trust. And it gets to that extreme because we're talking about very persons with low self-esteem themselves, very insecure about.
Let me ask you a question about.
Sure.
Let me back up a little bit on something that you said just a few seconds ago about us all being brought up in a violent culture. Yeah. And you are absolutely right. I mean, you are so right. It's everywhere at every turn, and we're not just talking about inside our homes, TV, movies. It's just so much stuff.
Yeah.
But let's reel this into a particular question.
Okay.
When we feel that beating is acceptable. And in many homes that's true. Now, I'm using the word beating because it's probably the most appropriate word. Versus saying spanking.
Right.
I have literally seen many instances in public that just made me want to crawl, turn into something like a superhero and do something about it, because it would just be so awful what I would see children and even some women in a few instances were confronted in public, and it's just awful. But I can you tell us what you think, what you teach, what insights you bring to what is inhumane and what is, actual spanking for correction? Because some of this is coming out of that, because some of these kids are getting some serious beat down and some serious verbal correction with a whole bunch of words they shouldn't even know at 2 or 3, and then that's their life. I tell you, this is a tough issue when we're looking at the things we've been taught that are the right thing to do as far as bringing correction to our children. And still so many support it, that, that, yes, that's what you need to do. That's what my parents did, and all of that. And I don't want to, this is not an argument for me about what your parents did and what was right and all of that. That's not where I'm going with it. What I'm trying to do is help understand that sometimes it may not be the right choice to make. Or if you feel that this is a physical correction is needed, I'm more inclined to believe in behavior modification practices, even with small children. And so just because that worked before doesn't mean that it works now, particularly since we have such a dominant problem in this area. So speak to what you feel needs to be talked about in regard to, spanking as correction, and what I tell you, I know are very serious beat down or attacks upon children and things like that. And they just grow up thinking, well, this is what my mom and dad did to me, so it must be all right if the person I'm living with or seeing is doing it. What would make that different?
Well, you bring up
you have to say.
I'm sorry, you bring up a wonderful, wonderful thing, because that is a constant debate, a constant conversation. As regards to spanking and not including that in violence. Most people most of us, we don't see correcting through spanking or through corporal punishment as violence. But we have to include it within the prism of violence, because people learn that there are acceptable forms of violence. This goes right in step with men who, first of all, see their wives not as equals, not as partners in their relationships, but as objects, as possessions, as persons who belong to them. And what we learn from a culture of violence in the home, with corporal punishment, is that, and with war, and with other types of violent sporting events, all of what we learn culturally is that there are acceptable forms of violence. And so when people learn that and take that into their ethic, that violence, I'm not a violent person, I don't like violence until this happens, or I'm not a violent person, I don't believe in violence until this happens. I mean, we're right now in a conversation nationally where we're talking about arming teachers because of systemic realities that have increased and heightened in our nation, mass shootings in school. And what do a violent nation do in order to respond to that? We bring a violent response to to thinking that violence will end violence. It's our continued culture, and it's the same thing with our homes. So when you have, and we all have been raised. If not, a lot of us have been raised in homes where there was corporal punishment as a form of discipline, and as noble and as positively commented on as people have about that. What we have to be able to do is to separate the choice of discipline from the person who we may adore who did it, because just because parents use that doesn't mean that it's the best thing to do. And we learn as we go. We've learned that is not as that corporal punishment is not as effective as we think it is, because with corporal punishment, you're wanting a behavior that you don't want to take place to stop. So if the behavior stops, then the person using the corporal punishment says that corporal punishment worked. But it did not work. It just stopped the behavior. What you don't measure is the long-lasting impact of that violence on that young child, and that's so that doesn't become part of the conversation. We see parallels of that with the men that I see in my practice.
And it definitely doesn't become a part of the success, like you just said, that we want to achieve. Listen, we are down, believe it or not, to only 3 minutes now. What I want you to just say to guests is I thank you for being my special guest. This has been just thoroughly informative, very insightful, and I appreciate what you brought to the topic today. It is extremely enlightening. What I'd like for you to say before we go, Dr. Gray, is to speak to individuals who may be in the midst of this problem and what might be a first step for them to getting help.
Well, if there's someone listening to me that is a batterer, the first thing that I would like to say to you is that I would hope that you would think about doing away with any type of value judgment on yourself, whether you're a bad guy or a good guy, or that you are trying to defend your actions by saying that you're not that type of person, because good guys do this. I need you to hear this. I need you to hear that good guys do this. And so it's going to be very important that you find some space, a safe space, a trusted space, a trusted therapeutic space for you to be able to face the truth about who you are and what you are doing and what's happening and why you're doing what you're doing. Because your wife, your girlfriend, your daughters, your parents, your sisters, your friends are at risk. And when we can separate our partners from the other women that we adore in our lives, that is just an example of the sickness that is in our brains, my brother. I want to say to you, find that safe space that you trust, that you can be open and honest about what's going on the inside of you, because I got to tell you, it's not her that's the problem. There's nothing that she could ever do that could cause you to respond the way that you do. So I just want to invite you to get the help that you can. And for the victim that is listening, there are resources in your community or close to your community. There are national hotlines that you can call to get the help that you need. I understand how difficult and dangerous it is for you to leave, but trust me, it would be the best move that you can make. Find the resources in your community and get the help that you can.
Oh, sir, thank you for everything that you have said, and keep up the marvelous work. I am going to look forward to reaching out again to you and your wife in the near future to continue this conversation. I do appreciate you so much. Thank you for being my special guest today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning in today. I know you have to be all the more enlightened, and hopefully, again, we can take the information, the insight, the wisdom, the advice that has been shared today, and we can all do whatever small part we can to help eradicate this problem. Please share this show with your platforms on social media. I'm going to look forward to talking to you again next time. I hope the rest of your week is just absolutely blessed. In the meantime, be good, be blessed, be awesome.